Yep.
No.
And they do get thrown out every day. But it's still illegal.
Made my choice, Holly.
You have to look at the State of the Union.
I'm going to Mississippi.
In the State of the Union,
Too.
that's like no different than Mexicans coming over here.
Merry Christmas.
There are certain things Mexicans can't do over here because of where they came from. That's why U.S. can't touch certain, like Arabs. Think about something. Why you think Arabs get away with as much as they get away with? Why you think that is? Because they're not U.S. citizens. That's why. So understand what I'm saying to you. If you are a U.S. citizen, your U.S. rights apply no matter where you are until you change citizenship. When you change citizenship, then you take on their laws. But until then, you are still a U.S. citizen. No matter what.
You have to abide by the laws of the country that you're visiting. Plenty of guys get catfish in Thailand, trying to smuggle drugs, or they do graffiti, or break one of their laws like urinating outside or chewing gum, and they go to jail or they get a public spanking. You have to abide by the laws of the country that you're visiting, period.
I'm saying this because the best thing for everybody to do right now is if they go to contact the authorities in Panama before they take their ass over there. Talk to the Panama authorities before they go over there. Yeah. But if you are a U.S. citizen, yes, your laws still apply as a U.S. citizen. Yes, there are certain things you cannot do in another country.
I still can't believe this is happening. Well, you definitely.
What if I told you the authorities? What if I told you I looked it up? It was something I was watching the other day. It is true. I've seen many cases like this. I've seen many cases where U.S. citizens. Okay, let's talk about something for a minute.
Gotta get going. Airport's gonna be packed tonight.
U.S. law does not apply outside the U.S. The only time that it applies when it involves children. You cannot touch children.
Third-party doctrine is a legal principle derived from a case in, I believe, the 1970s called Smith versus Maryland. And Smith was this knucklehead who was harassing this lady, making phone calls to her house. And when she would pick up, he'd just, I don't know, sit there heavy breathing, whatever, like a classic creeper. And, you know, it was terrifying, this poor lady. So she calls the cops and says, one day I got one of these phone calls, and then I see this car creeping past my house on the street, and she got a license plate number. So she goes to the cops and she goes, is this the guy? And the cops, again, they're trying to do a good thing here. They look up his license plate number, and they find out where this guy is, and then they go, well, what phone number is registered to that house? And they go to the phone company, and they say, can you give us this record? And the phone company says, yeah, sure. And it's the guy. The cops got their man, right? So they go arrest this guy, and then in court, his lawyer brings all this stuff up, and they go, you did this without a warrant. That was the problem. Was they went to the phone company and they got the records without a warrant. They just asked for it, or they subpoenaed it, right? Some lower standard of legal review. And the company gave it to him and got the guy. They marched him off to jail. And they could have gotten a warrant, right? But it was just expedience. They just didn't want to take the time. The small town cops, you can understand how it happens. They know the guy's a creeper. They just want to get him off to jail. And so they made a mistake, but the government doesn't want to let go. They fight on this. And they go, it wasn't actually, they weren't his records. And so because they didn't belong to him, he didn't have a Fourth Amendment right to demand a warrant be issued for them. They were the company's records, and the company provided them voluntarily, and hence no warrant was required because you can get whatever you want without a warrant as long as it's yours. Now here's the problem. The government extrapolated a principle in a single case of a single known suspected criminal who they had real good reasons to suspect was their guy. and use that to go to a company and get records from them and establish a precedent that these records don't belong to the guy, they belong to the company. And then they said, well, if one person doesn't have a Fourth Amendment interest in records held by a company, no one does. And so the company then has absolute proprietary ownership of all of these records about all of our lives. And remember, this is back in the 1970s. You know, the internet hardly exists in these kind of contexts. Smartphones, don't exist. Modern society, modern communications don't exist. This is the very beginning of the technological era. And flash forward now 40 years, and they are still relying on this precedent about this one, and they are still relying on this precedent about this one, pervy creeper to go, nobody has a privacy right for anything that's held by a company. And so long as they do that, companies are going to be extraordinarily powerful, and they're going to be extraordinarily abusive. And this is something that people don't get. They go, oh, well, it's data collection, right? They're exploiting data. This is data about human lives. It is data about people. These records are about you. It's not data that's being exploited. It's people that are being exploited. It's not data that's being manipulated. It's you that's being manipulated. And this is something that I think a lot of people are beginning to understand. The problem is the companies and the governments are still pretending they don't understand or disagreeing with this. And this reminds me of something that one of my old friends, John Perry Barlow, who served with me at the Freedom of the Press Foundation, I'm the president of the board, used to say to me, which is, you can't awaken someone who's pretending to be asleep.